As you guys have seen over the past decade, technology stocks are increasingly more important for us to be able to grow our society as a whole. And what has been lacking, other than some companies just resting on their laurels of great profit margins and just going at their day-to-day business without making them more efficient. Now, come into the government side of things, the company we're talking about today will be implementing huge efficiencies with their software as a service provider in Canadian and as well as US agencies across both of those countries, and potentially looking elsewhere and expanding outside of the borders in the near future. This company has already amassed over 800 customers in the Canadian and United States market and has a plethora of different applications that it can be used across different things like firehouses, healthcare payment systems, and a bunch of others that we'll be able to talk about in today's session. So feel free to hop into the investor presentation with me today as we talk about HS GovTech or HDSLF on the OTC market. See you guys in the computer. So hopping in here, we'll be able to look at HS GovTech, which is focusing on software as a service for government agencies. And we're going to be touching on a little bit about their products as well as the government agencies in which they've already started to work on. And I just want to remind everybody that you can find this stock ticker symbol on the Canadian Stock Exchange at HS, the OTC markets at HDSLF, and also at Frankfurt Stock Exchange on 38H. This is the investor presentation as of May 2022. And the first thing I want to highlight specifically, as we've kind of alluded to already, the 800 plus customer base, the 25 million sales pipeline and growing, and the 90% retention rate, which is pretty impressive. The thing that I want to highlight specifically when I have the opportunity to talk to Silas, who's the CEO of HS GovTech in the coming days, is what's the net revenue rate or retention rate that they have going forward, or what they've seen thus far. So you are able to retain 90% of those customers, but as we've kind of alluded to, or we will see in this presentation, a lot of those customers end up being upsold into acquiring additional products. And I've seen a lot of the interviews that Silas has been able to provide to multiple people, such as Ryan from Independent Investor and many other interviews, where he talks about, hey, we have this opportunity to utilize this piece of software, but it's almost like an ecosystem, like an iOS or some other companies like Microsoft having their Office suite, being able to come into sort of your agency and be able to provide additional services, whether it's payment systems or the like, to be able to make things a lot easier for you. And as we've seen IT services growing within the government space, it's up to over $110 billion a year as of 2021. The total addressable market for this, as we'll see later in the presentation, is going upwards of $2 billion. So there's an opportunity for a company like HS GovTech to come in and fill that space. So to read directly off the slide, HS GovTech is a leading provider of the software as a service applications for government in Canada and the United States, committed to helping government agencies operating more efficiently. So that shouldn't be any more different than what we've talked about. But hearing specifically from Silas himself, we're not just building a platform, we're building an ecosystem, and highlighting specifically the revolution that they're undergoing, living in an era of rapidly changing technologies that push the abilities to transact and do business with ease and efficiency, which when you come to the government doesn't necessarily come directly to mind, correct? So hopefully HS GovTech will be able to provide something like that. From private business to personal life, cloud computing and mobile technologies have paved the way, realizing new ways to organize and communicate in an increasingly complex and dynamic world. So as we've kind of alluded to, when you deal with the government, whether it's the DMV or whether it's just getting a license or anything of the like, you have to go to several different agencies in order to almost seem like to do one thing on its own. So I think that discontinuity between different agencies, that discontinuity between how things are run, leads to a lot of inefficiencies, as you've already probably alluded to. It leads to a lot more overhead, leads to a lot more lead time for things to actually occur. And hopefully and potentially that's where HS GovTech comes into play. HS GovTech Enterprise Solutions empower a new model for government based on team collaboration, whereby workforce resources can be distributed via the cloud to provide services on demand, connecting frontline civic employees, back office staff, as well as citizens seamlessly. So why? Why are we talking about HS GovTech? And that's obviously a lot of the things we already alluded to. Significant opportunity in the space to help modernize the government. Predictable reoccurring revenue stream of $10 million. So annual retained revenue of about $10 million in the 12 to 18 months kind of going forward. Silas has over 20 years of experience in this space, and they've been able to retain 90% of their customers. So all of this mostly has a front-facing sort of point of view to be able to help support the frontline employees that are on the day-to-day, to help with specific customers or citizens of their particular area that they're working for. And they're obviously the face of the government, right? The people that are working and interacting with the citizens, firefighters, investigators, regulators, all interacting with these citizens regularly. And as the nature of the front line typically doesn't lend itself to ease of use, right? Shared resources, scalable resources, very cost-effective solutions. So the hope is the HS GovTech suite of products is to be able to help, intuitively out of the box without any sort of specialized expertise, jump right in and be able to use within a matter of minutes without having to have some sort of massive IT level support in your organization. You have the ability to have cloud applications reside on a shared hard drive system, which will be accessible by many users. Co-locating software on shared hard drive allows processing power to be quickly shifted from low need to high need programs without the need to go through acquisition cycles or purchase additional hardware, run it off your direct laptop or something of the like. It's going to be run off of the cloud. And of course, cloud computing reduces the amount of overall hardware and overhead that you locally will need to utilize, and can reduce the maintenance costs and costs of associated personnel to be able to upkeep that as well. So that's kind of all the kind of use, right? The use case of the applications, the cloud use, meaning lowering your overhead when it comes to actual IT staff, as well as coupling that with actual hardware and having to renew that hardware on a regular basis. Everything is done on the cloud, so you don't necessarily have to worry about having that upkeep as you might need in the future. Now, this is just a look at a multitude of the different customers of over 800 at this point that HS GovTech has been able to get involved with. You can see states in the union from anywhere between Virginia, Wisconsin, Tennessee, California, all represented in here as well. And we'll also be able to look at the specific market coverage based off this map here of the United States and Canada. You can see all the darker blues being states in which HS GovTech has actually been able to get involved in. So West Coast is kind of covered. A majority of the East Coast is kind of covered with the exception of Maine. Looks like Massachusetts, Pennsylvania, New Jersey, to name a few, as well as Delaware, Maryland. And then you also have the big state of Texas in there as well. But you also have Ontario in there and a few others in Canada to be able to claim that, hey, we have coverage here from HS GovTech. And don't forget Hawaii there, all the way to the west. So as I've alluded to, the products are expansive when it comes to HS GovTech, looking across cloud services, touch services, pay services, call services, and healthcare services as well. So what we'll talk about going through is each one of these in a little bit more depth. But as I said, as you provide this sort of cloud service or pay service, you have the opportunity to upsell, which is the real way that HS GovTech might be able to build a truly impressive revenue stream kind of going forward. They might have the ability to sell something like an HSCLOUD service to some of these folks, which is allowing them to kind of reduce their local overhead. But when it comes to somebody that actually ends up having to pay, whether that's a payment for reoccurring, registration for cars, or whether that's a healthcare provider that needs to pay in that sort of service, where they'll be able to grab a 0.5 to 1% payment fee that goes directly back to HS GovTech, or just being able to provide some sort of online template that somebody can fill out instead of having a piece of paper where it then has to be manually input for anything to actually go into the computer. It can already be uploaded to the cloud and be accessible digitally for doctors or anybody else that might be wanting to utilize that information when you fill it out directly. So these are just a small hint of some of the projects. We'll go into a little bit more detail on some of them, more specifically highlighting, and first and foremost, the HSCLOUD, which is the hope to fully configure some of these government agencies to organize data in a user-friendly manner, retrieves necessary documents, forms, information quickly and easily, be able to scan them and be able to put them up on some sort of cloud database for easy use and easy to access. This obviously reduces the need for an IT department in each individual agency, as you'd be able to utilize HSCLOUD for that. Organizes the government's interaction with the front-end facing public and the civic people that are in the face-to-face in a very efficient manner. Simplifies the routine processes like permits, fines, performing inspections, because everything will be a little bit more accessible via the cloud. And of course, it just has its self-service capabilities, customer-facing platforms, significant time and cost savings, which makes a lot of sense if you're able to upload digital files directly to and have a lot more ease of use. Instead of having to do manual paperwork, you'll be able to have that access through the cloud, and obviously enhances the speed of revenue collection and payments as well, kind of going forward. So not only does it help with the customer having to ease of pay, but also the government's having ease of revenue on the opposite side as well. Now, the cloud couples very nicely with HSTOUCH. Now, think specifically if you are a government agency that specializes in tobacco or alcohol forms and people needing to apply for those sort of licenses or revenue or anything of the like. That's kind of the example they might be seeing, whether it's food or anything of the like. That's the example that you're kind of seeing on the screen there. So they're able to set up these forms to automatically be uploaded to the cloud and basically have a set form. So instead of manually writing something down on a piece of paper, you have this ability to fill it in rather than necessarily have to go and dig up a piece of paper from many, many moons ago. So conduct paperless field inspections from any place, anytime, with the intuitive suite of native apps for whether that's iOS, which is the Apple product, Android, or Windows. So ease of use of some sort of form to fill out rather than some sort of piece of paper. Now, looking forward to the My Health Department part of HS GovTech's applications. It's more of an interactive dashboard or an operating system almost that positions HS GovTech as an extension of the government to allow them to be a conduit for direct communication between either the customer, private industry, or the government. Allows for future revenue generating opportunities for HS GovTech as well. Huge solutions for whether that's industry compliance, physical payments, paperwork, all kind of being uploaded to this sort of template here that you're kind of seeing on the screen. And this obviously eliminates the need for a lot of back-end IT people, data entry folks, and just overall administrative work when it comes to being able to move things around and keep data in appropriate order on a physical basis. Now you have it on a digital basis, which makes things a lot simpler. Now, couple this with the ability to have an online payment system that creates a unified solution for collecting revenue throughout. So it's a free add-on for the government that provides transformative revenue stream, and this is an opportunity for up to $885 million market opportunity just based on the 2021 government spending that we've been able to source through the government. And what this ends up doing is providing this free system, and it ends up taking 0.5% or 1% of the transaction revenue rather than, say, a fixed cost or a fixed fee. And this is basically having a ease of use for the government departments to use to be able to immediately get quicker revenue through the door, and just the ability to have a payment system which is unified rather than having a bunch of different systems. If anybody has gone and used any or tried to pay the government in any sort of way, sometimes you have to go directly to, sometimes you have to go through a specific provider for government services. And so having a unified system, whether it was nationwide or throughout all of Canada, would be extremely useful, as you'd be able to just pay through one system. And I think that would be the most prudent thing to do to be able to make sure that we're not just going between a bunch of different systems. So another opportunity and application that HS GovTech has is GovCALL, which is a fully featured secure teleconferencing platform, which obviously has voice over IP and video chat as well, and regulatory data management. The thing that's nice about this opportunity is that you don't need an application, whether that's to bog down your phone or anything of the like. So it's native to in-browser, whether it's Safari or any of the other browsers that you have on your phone, such as Chrome or Edge for Microsoft. It's something that you don't necessarily need to install directly onto your phone. So that's pretty nice, and that obviously provides numerous government functions by replacing in-person transactions, site visits, clinical health checks, contact tracing. All those things can now be done with a video call rather than having to specifically sign up and go into an office. And this is sold as a product upgrade to customers that can get a premium version for new customers over time. This could potentially increase the annual occurring revenue from each individual customers between 15 to 30%. And overall, this might be able to reduce the amount of employees you might have if you're not having direct contact, say in a health space. You would have to reduce the amount of, say, soaps and everything the like to have prep time between each individual, say, client, because obviously you're not having to take safety precautions for each individual visit that you have. So as we've alluded to at the beginning of the video, we have over $110 billion as of last year being used for IT spending throughout the United States government. So that obviously provides a significant market opportunity for HS GovTech to come in and be able to help with that modernizing transition that the government is kind of going into. So as you can already see in the right-hand corner, the FDA is going through a retail flexible funding model, which is a grant that is being $40 million over the course of 3 years to modernize and better track foodborne risk factor data from inspections. This might help a lot with tracking, with things that we've seen from the CDC, with the Center for Disease Control, with the previous pandemic or the currently ongoing pandemic that we've kind of had, has a similar nature to it, right? Let's modernize the tools that they have at the FDA. Now let's look at HS GovTech's TAM, or total addressable market, and specifically where you have the annual revenue rate kind of coming through. So the first and foremost, the smallest of them would be the agriculture market, being able to track food supply chains, permits for farms and packaging plants, regulate large-scale food facilities as well. So that's about 15,000 users that could be used across the entirety of the United States and Canada. So relatively small, but it does provide a $20 million annual run rate, which is pretty impressive altogether. Now, if you couple that with, say, the environmental health market, which is approximately 80,000 users, this is permits for restaurants, pools, hotels, helping the assistance of ensuring food safety and regulating millions of different private businesses. It's an additional 120 million on top of that. And then coupling that again with clinical and public health markets, you have contact tracing, disease surveillance, 120,000 users added on there. So you're looking at over 220 or so thousand users just from those three potential markets alone. And then coupling that with the fire department, which is a massive use of being able to help regulate fire and rescue safety, on-site inspections. You have over 1 million users specifically just for this opportunity alone, helping issue occupancy and safety permits across the entirety of the United States as well as Canada. That gets you to above a $2 billion plus sort of total addressable market if you couple all those together. Now, the sources are from the government themselves, so if you want to look at the footnotes here, you'll be able to figure out where exactly all these different sort of dollar values kind of come from. But this is the total addressable market, and HS GovTech is really just getting started into it, and you can kind of see just based off of where they've been over the past few years and how they've been able to grow pretty expansively over the past year or so, going from a subscription to professional services model and being able to grow to over a $5 million run rate as of last year, just about to crack $6 million as of last year. And currently looking at about a $10 million annual run rate in the 12 to 18 month period kind of going forward. So we've seen a drastic increase from 2020 to 2021, going from 3.4 million to 5.7, which was almost a 100% increase year over year, to now going towards and aiming towards a 10 million, which is an additional, say, 80% increase year over year, which is pretty expansive. You know, maybe you won't necessarily get all that 10 million within 2022, but being able to go from 5.7 to even 8 million in 2022 is massive. That's a 60% gain year over year. So pretty impressive numbers kind of coming in, growing pipeline with predictable reoccurring revenues. And the thing that I'm most curious about is with the subscription and professional services, as I kind of alluded to when I'll be able to get to talk to Silas, is that 90% customer retention is high. That's great. But I'm curious if when they get these customers in the door, if they're able to get over 100% NRR, net retention rate, so the customers, the 90% of customers that do stay, are they growing that initial revenue stream that they're kind of bringing in the door, right? So they might have come in and say 2020 for $1 a year, and they're able to keep, let's just say 90% of those customers, so they're down to 90 cents as the normal baseline. But do the existing customers, or those 90% of customers, add on the things that they've been talking about? They add on the other applications to be able to grow that to 90 cents to, say, $1.30 or $1.40 of revenue for every dollar that was initially kind of put in. And that kind of just shows you to be able to growth. So you don't necessarily have to focus as much on getting new sales through the door, focusing more on just keeping existing customers and growing them as well. Now, it's not to say that you aren't going to continue to go reach out for additional agencies, but it just goes to show you that it's almost like a weed, right? You're able to acquire a customer, continue to expand the amount of revenue you're able to get from that one customer over the course of several years and grow that, rather than specifically having that sort of treadmill worth of opportunities that you have to go and chase to be able to keep up with revenue. So I'm really curious how that's going to go kind of going forward for this kind of company, and be able to have Silas Garrison on the channel just in a couple days or so. He's the CEO and director of HS GovTech. So Mr. Garrison is a seasoned business leader and tech entrepreneur, previously serving as the company's CTO. During that time, he oversaw the development and deployment of HS GovTech's premier platform, HSCLOUD suite, and he's consulted and worked with a variety of different enterprises and organizations ranging from Fortune 500 banks as well as media conglomerates. You have a multitude of other folks on here that have an expansive amount of experience. You can see Mark Redcliffe over here is an independent director, has over 21 years of experience. You have Joseph Wilmalt, who has over 35 years of business experience, serving across a multitude of roles as well. You have Ali, who has over 20 years of experience in financial services industry. And so what I think is prudent is not only do you have folks that are good in, say, the government space, but you also have folks that are great and have experience across a multitude of different industries to be able to bring, let's just say, all the different perspectives, the diversity of different perspectives, all under one house, on one board, to be able to understand how to best make the government's most efficient, and then obviously deploy that through the products that you're offering. To be able to get and bring those perspectives in is huge to be able to understand, instead of just having a government-focused lens, which obviously has gotten them to the inefficient place that they are. Bringing in that private industry knowledge and making, the private industry more efficient has been a key thing to make some of these other companies do as well as they have. You can tell that by, looking at a lot of different companies, their ability to grow and make things more efficient. You need to bring that sort of experience from all those other industries into the government, and hopefully these guys have that experience and can bring that to the products that they sell. Now, once again, I did just want to highlight where you can look at some of this information, dive a little bit deeper if you guys are curious. So ticker symbol on the Canadian Stock Exchange is HS, or on the OTC markets, HDSLF. You can find out more at www.hsgovtech.com. There's an email address there for investors, and as well as phone numbers that you can call if you guys are interested. Now, I do appreciate you guys giving me the opportunity to discuss with you guys the opportunity that HS GovTech is bringing to be able to modernize the government in the United States and Canada. I would love to hear some experiences you guys have about some of the inefficiencies that you've experienced in the government, and how HS GovTech might be able to help you, or help, say, the government make things different, down in the comments section down below. All kidding aside, with that last comment, I am really curious to see how this $2 billion total addressable market continues to be addressed by companies like HS GovTech, or just other companies in general. I am curious to see and have great conversation with Silas on the channel in a couple days. So I'm really hoping to hope you guys are looking out for that, where I address specifically the net retention rate, which I'm really curious about, as that is a key indicator for a lot of people in the cloud services industries, as well as companies like Palantir and Snowflake, to be able to make sure that not only they're retaining customers, but growing customers, and their revenue rate kind of going forward. So I'm really curious to see what other material I can kind of have. I've had some great learnings, and have done a great amount of research listening to not only some of the Silas interviews from some of my friends like Ryan, an independent investor, but some of the other interviews that he's done and looking at the investor presentation and some of the other articles that are out on the internet. So I'm curious to see if they're able to achieve their goal of getting to almost $6 million last year in run rate, to be able to get to over $10 million in run rate in the next 12 to 18 months, as they said. So I'll be keeping an eye on that for sure. But I really hope this video helped you guys understand. Now, remember, this is for informational purposes only. Please do your own due diligence. But I'm really curious to hear what you guys might have to say about HS GovTech and where you think, personally, where they can advance in making things more efficient. Feel free to leave that down in the comment section down below. I'll be able to pass that on to the team. And hopefully, you'll be able to reduce the amount of time that you spend in some of these government agencies and be able to just go about your day-to-day life, right? And so hopefully HS GovTech can help us with that. But anyway, thank you guys for stopping by the channel. I'll see you guys in the next one. Cheers.